after our first year where we lost money essentially. And so we'll be at over 10 million now in just pretty much HVAC. Number one, it's all about people, right? Like get in and make sure you don't break the number one rule in small business, and that's messing with people's money. Hey guys, just don't worry about any other services. Just get to 5 million in one service first, and then you might know what you're doing. Acquisitions are sexy.
Recently, we've been buying off supplyhouse.com. And we've been able to get plumbing, HVAC, and electrical stuff off there. And my biggest concern was timeliness. Like, hey, if I need this thing pretty quick, can I get it? And you for sure can. So that was awesome. So deliveries are fast. They ship coast to coast. And you can call them and you can get expert support with real people, which is awesome. So check out supplyhouse.com for buying the stuff you need. Welcome back to Owned and Operated. Today, we've got my friend Nathan from Bart's Heating and Air on the show. Welcome in, Nathan.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Nathan. For those of you tuning in, you should probably watch it. This is going to be an episode of two handsome bald men ganging up on John and making fun of him the entire episode. So we're very excited today.
Yeah, it's going to be, my long, luscious locks will be challenging to mock. I'll be doing a lot of hair flips. It's going to be good. Well, the topic of the conversation today is going to be growth through acquisition. And I'm really excited to talk about that. And I think you're just a great person to talk about it with because you are actively growing through acquisition. So could you give us a little bit of how'd you get to where you are today and what does Bart's look like now?
Yeah, so bought our first HVAC company in DFW in late 2021, November, doing literally like $1 million in revenue. So we took it from $1 million to $1.7 million in our first year, which doesn't sound like that big a number, but man, we sure messed up.
That's 70% growth. That's 70% growth.
I know the percentage sounds sexy, but it didn't feel sexy. So 1.7 first year, and then January of 2023, we ended up acquiring our second one, just a little bit bigger, 1.2 million in revenue, and ended that year at 3.6 altogether. So we're at like a 65-70% kind of acquisition percentage, and then the other 30% plus, organic growth. And then we just completed our third acquisition here in 2024. And that one's doing about 5.8 million. So we're on pace for, 10.5 million ish, for going forward, on run rate and, trying to get that up higher. So, still on that kind of 70%, revenue has come through acquisition and the other 30% through organic. And we're starting to look to flip that a little bit, but we'll see how it goes.
And are those all going into the Bart's brand? Are you rebranding all three of those to be Bart's?
This last one, I don't think so. It's bigger than Bart's. We're going to end up around 4.5 million this year for just Bart's, and then with the new one, it's called Christmas Air. All the numbers say we should rebrand to Christmas Air because it's bigger, better SEO, better volume on website traffic, and they just have a cult following. So. It's a TBD a little bit, but most likely we'll go towards the Christmas Air name.
That's the right move. When you first brought this up like 2 months ago, or I don't even remember what it was, and we started looking into it, I was like, he's got to reverse brand this thing because but it's such a weird decision to take on the acquired brand, but it is the right one. In this very rare case, this is the right decision.
I can't disagree with you on that. It's hard. You put your heart and soul into a brand and you're like, oh, this is it. But I think for 1,000 reasons, you're right. Yeah.
I'm just glad you guys got there because that's a decision that you're going to be thankful for the next decade. That's the right decision. Yeah. That's awesome.
Got lots to figure out still on the culture compensation and culture and then combining everything still, but we're working through it. And, lots to come for sure.
I was talking with a couple friends of mine earlier in the week, I think it was Monday, and we were talking about growth through acquisition and then sort of the acquired growth percentage. And obviously it changes over time a lot. I'd never done the math until Monday on what my percentage of revenue was bought versus organic. We are now the opposite of what you guys are. We're 70% organic and 30% acquired. But if you would have asked me in 2022, 2 years ago, it would have been like exactly what you're describing, 70-30 acquired versus organic. And even I feel like that's going to be a really challenging number to change as we grow, unless you buy like massive companies. Because, we're looking at a couple deals now, and it's like I'll still be 70% when I'm done. It'll be like 71%.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, same idea. I think we're a little behind you on that kind of cycle, but we're trying to figure out that lead gen machine and really build that at the level we need to, so we can flip that script a little bit, because we have some ambitious goals.
I think it's so cool though, because I mean, realistically, our stories are very similar, but we are a year behind you. And so like we bought a year after you, we bought our second one a year after you. Numbers are all similar within like a couple 100,000. And I'm excited if I have a little 5.8 million come through the trench, I'd be very happy right about now. But that's interesting. It's very interesting. And with that, I mean, what has been some of the hardest parts of integration for you as you're taking on kind of these bigger companies? I know one of them was out of your service area, correct? Out of your typical service area?
Yeah. It was about almost 90 minutes away from the current one. Still in DFW, so that's good. We basically cover the northwest quadrant of DFW, and we don't really have a desire yet to go across it, because people don't realize that service area is essentially the state of Connecticut. And so just trying to get that level of scale, man, I'd rather have service route density than saying I'm everywhere in DFW. So as far as integration, I mean, honestly, the first two acquisitions, no people came with it except technicians. So integration is super easy, because they basically all got paid better coming over, and in some ways treated better. So I think culturally we know who we are, and people are really excited from day one to come over. And then this last one has been, outside the admin bullcrap of like getting software and billing and all that stuff switched over. Dude, the people have been incredible. It's our first team that has actually come over, and they've been unreal. And so it's everything we thought it was and more.
That's awesome. What's the team size now?
Yeah, so it's about, I think 17 people, 18 people, right around there.
All HVAC too, across the board, no plumbing, no electrical, just HVAC only?
On the Bart's brand, we did introduce plumbing in the last 90 days or so.
Okay.
Yeah, so not moved over to Christmas yet, but maybe one day.
So the whole company is 18 people? Like
oh no.
Office.
Sorry. So the new acquisition, Christmas era, about 18. So we're probably right around 38 all in.
A lot breaks at 30 employees, and I'm sure you guys are starting to feel that. Where do you feel like the gaps are starting to show up?
I think it's just really, trying to nail down expectations in between any kind of management layers and really get information to cascade down. Like one of the things I say, like you have to say something 7 times before it's in anyone's brains, and you got to say it the same way over and over and over and over again. And so trying to get the repetitions in at every level to really send the messaging that you want. And it just means you can't send a lot of messages. You got to send very few messages, and they have to be very simple, and they have to be very, 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 very consistent. And so trying to do that across when you have multiple locations, and I know you've consolidated, John, where you had multiple locations. It's painful when they're not in the same location, right? And so we've consolidated the Bart's brands into one location, and then it's our aspiration in the next 12, 18 months to really be in a much larger location with all the brands. So I'd say it's that communication, really nailing it down, and then just consistency and knowing who you are. So knowing who you are as a company, how you compensate at every single level, and then like, what do you do when no one else is around? Like, how do you make decisions? How's that guided? Is that values? Is that the mission of the company, and all those things? So I think it's a lot of soft stuff. And then just trying to get reporting and financials straight so that everyone has a number and they know if they're doing good or not, regardless of whether the boss is in the room.
Have you introduced HR recruitment yet? I guess I want to walk through like the infrastructure.
Sure.
So, because I think that's what's going to break. If I'm going to basically double the team size, double the revenue, like is accounting there, is marketing there, is HR there? So like, how have you gotten the teams there in this state of rapid growth?
Yeah. So right now, of the owners, there's 4 owners. We're all partners. 2 are in the business full time. One of those guys is like very much a operations GM type, role. He's running everything. The other one is a financial accounting. He's been a CFO type role. So he's really pushing hard on the administrative side with the cash management and money management systems. So that's the level up there. And then next level, you essentially have the GMs, one for Bart's, one for Christmas Air. And then you have some shared services behind the scenes, but we do have an HR person / recruiter. We do have, we got 4 or 5 with after hours and overseas, like 6 people taking calls and doing outbound and all that stuff. And then you have, I think we're at around 20 techs and installers, et cetera, in there. And then you have a couple warehouse guys and then a few salespeople. So I think that's it. And then marketing is outsourced.
There's been a couple times in my life where we doubled in acquisitions. And Jack, I think you just did too.
Yeah, we just went through this process. So
it breaks everything.
It breaks everything.
Just absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I'd say we do have me and this exact leadership team. We've built a company and sold it before. We all worked at WeWork as well, where our P&L went from, $4 million in revenue to 220 in less than 3 years. So we've gotten to see growth and what that looks like. So we over-indexed on kind of some of the infrastructure in the beginning. And we have we're over, that's why I'm not in the business day to day right now. We're not ready yet for that burden on the P&L, but it's a huge piece of kind of making sure it doesn't break so far that it's actually holding us back.
I think we probably flirted with that line when we were growing. In 2021, we tripled in headcount, and that was a real challenge. And it took the next 2 years because we went from 1 location to 4, and I wouldn't even say knew how to run 1 location very, if I'm looking back at myself, I don't think I really knew what I was doing with 1, let alone 4. And it is kind of funny because I've gone back and forth on do acquisitions help, and when to use them and how to think about them. Because I think now my team is very cautious about acquisitions, where we used to just, kick down the door, let's friggin' go. But now there is so much focus every day on doing the thing. And it would, we have a few right now that we're talking to, and all of our conversations are, how much is this going to disrupt the organization? And can we do this without interrupting our service managers who are driving results every day? And can we do this without interrupting accounting that we need them to do their job every day? And how much of a burden is this going to be on HR? It's just a totally different experience than what it was a couple years ago when we were just yeeting through windows to do deals.
I feel the same way, if I'm honest with you. Acquisitions are sexy. It moves the needle for a lot of people. And for us, it was all about getting that base. And I think you and Rich were probably one of the first ones to tell me, hey guys, just don't worry about any other services. Just get the 5 million in one service first, and then you might know what you're doing. And I pushed back pretty hard on that. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, because for us it's just are you doing this well enough, and how much can you move the needle with that? And so we'll be at over 10 million now in just pretty much HVAC. Plumbing's really small piece of that so far, and going to the next level is not as exciting, or it's a bunch of acquisitions aren't necessarily the most important thing now, right? We have a base that we can work with. But, for us, it's either adding geography or adding a new service. That's the 2 biggest drivers behind if we did additional acquisitions, because I don't just necessarily need a whole bunch more HVAC revenue.
Yeah. And I think what starts to happen, and you're at the size now where it happens, is you can, at 10 million, you have enough to organic growth becomes meaningful, where you couldn't organically grow $5 million last year, but next year you could, you literally could just organically add $5 million.
100%.
We also have the ability to start like actually building a brand too, right? Because you're at 4 million, you're really just focusing on your marketing is all towards leads. And now it's towards branding and who are we in this bigger picture, which is really nice. It seems like, but also, I mean, I think the difference changes, John, for you, right? Is when you acquire, when you're small, you're able to buy through those large step changes. So theoretically, right, you're buying through the 5 and you're even buying through the 10 in this case, which is a really nice ability to have that then incoming cash flow to be able to pay for the headcounts to fix those systems versus trying to organically grow through it is so hard because the cash is just not there for the bloat.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So, I mean like, John, if you had a $50 million company come along and was like, hey, let's do it. And then it pushed you through, the next two, changes. I think it's a different conversation for you, but a $2 million little HVAC shop just isn't going to get you through that $50,000 or $50 million mark.
We have one that we're looking at that's a $5.5 million. And I would have to add literally 0 overhead individuals to take on $5.5 million of revenue, because we were already going to grow 9 million organically next year. So like 5 million is just like, okay, it's kind of wild. It's really like wild. Yeah. I assume I'm sure it changes later on, but like, yeah, it's crazy.
That's cool.
It's crazy. Okay. All right. So when did your deal close, Nathan?
August 28th. So we're about 45 days in. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we're pretty far in. Everyone's on Service Titan. Like you said, integration is going well. Can you walk us through the steps?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, some of the integration that would be the most painful usually is, I'd say, kind of on hold while we're still working through the, reverse merger and branding and making sure that we're all on the same page there, because, their change management's hard. So we're in there just trying to build trust. The biggest things, we shared kind of our plan with the sellers and the previous owners. And it's number one, it's all about people, right? Like get in and make sure you don't break the number one rule in small business, and that's messing with people's money. So trying to get payroll straight, make sure there's no errors. And we still had some small hiccups, but trying to get that straight, make sure the people, spend time with the people, build trust. They have access to you and you're visible. And then behind the scenes, you're doing all the the painful things. Like I think spent about 8.5 hours on the phone the second day, just trying to get Verizon to switch over, phone numbers to us so that we have control. And that's one of the hardest ones. And then, just wrestling through, trying to get all the pings on my credit, because we got to change all the accounts over and they got to run credit again to make sure that we're legit and all this stuff. So, at the end of the day, it's just, you just got a huge checklist. I think we have, 150 items or something that we're just running through, making sure that we have everything we need to be successful going forward. But it's been so easy going on that. This has been the easiest one for us so far, because we've done it twice before now. We actually have a team that's helping us with things that had access. They have an incredible GM who's running the business and running the show. The seller had kind of not been around a whole lot, and he really empowered his GM. So, so it's been super smooth so far.
Yeah. When do you think you start? If I think about doubling in HVAC, like there's the initial list of things you have to do, and then there's the value optimizing stuff.
Yep.
So renegotiating with vendors, hey, my volume just doubled. Nailing down marketing. Like when do you think you get to the value add stuff?
We're already deep in it. So we've already renegotiated with vendors. To be fair, that's how we actually got this deal. It was through our account manager for our suppliers, Sure Supply. They've been unbelievable, and they introduced us to them. So we actually had the same vendor. They had a vested interest to give it to another, American Standard, dealer like us. And so we closed the deal, showed that credibility, and renegotiated prices along the way. So we already had new pricing in place basically day one. And then we started pushing more of like, hey, how do we get that next level? What's how do we do better here? And so we're renegotiating for like the next fiscal year as well. But I mean, it's crazy how different the pricing has been on equipment for us, and trying to push that down. We're not into multifamily new construction levels yet, but trying to get there, soon, right? So that's been really powerful. Renegotiating. So Service Titan, we want to go over there. They're on House Call Pro currently. So, we'll move over. We're in the middle of negotiating that right now, trying to figure out what it is. So, certainly be anchoring on some of my friends' numbers that they have to make sure we're good there. But, so Service Titan will be one of the big moves, hopefully here at some point. If we combine, obviously, and then, marketing, going deep there. So they are kicking our butt. We kind of had the same SEO journey. We had some issues with a new website. Both our SEO kind of tanked. And so they came up with a new provider. We came up with a new provider, and they're kind of kicking our butts on the SEO side. And so we've been going deep on like why that is, how do we mimic that? And, maybe we just put more horsepower behind that brand. So, so working through that and figuring out where else we want to spend. Cause like a lot of these acquisitions, they don't really spend much of any money in advertising or on the marketing side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So one of our biggest issues we had with acquisitions was the cultural shift after, right? We do things a very specific way. And when you're buying small, a lot of employees chose small because either, hey, they didn't want to work for a big company, they didn't want to focus on revenue, whatever the case may be. How has that change been? Or was the company like enough in size and culture that it was pretty smooth?
I'd say culture has been relatively smooth. The first one was easier because we didn't know. We just didn't know enough. And so we kind of said, hey, whatever the previous owner has kind of made promises on or done, we're going to stick with that for a while until we figure out who we truly are. And I'd say after our first year where we lost money, essentially, barely, we were right around break even, but then you still had to pay debt. So it was not break even. And we had to put more money in. Like you get real serious about, what a company needs to look like. And so we ended up joining Certain Path, later that next year and revamping the whole deal. And so, it really helped us establish who we were, how do we compensate? How do we run calls? How do we do business? And I think that's created just a little bit more, rigidity around this is how Bart does it. Right. And I realize not everyone's going to be attracted to that, and that's okay. We will be your biggest cheerleader if you want to go somewhere else, but this is who we are and this is who we're attracting. And if that means there's gonna be some turnover, then I would classify that as healthy turnover, and I'm okay with that.
And so when you bought Christmas now, right, that's the real question, right? Is their whole team, you don't want 17 people turning over, but at the same time, you still want them to do the Bart's way and the Nathan way, essentially, the Certain Path way. So how has that transition been? Because I mean, if I'm going to be blunt and vulnerable on this podcast right now, we lost almost the entire plumbing company we bought because of this issue right out the gate. And it's because they were not the rapid way, which is very similar to your all way, I'm sure. But they were just they're different culture, different people. And so how has that transition been and how are you managing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's actually the reason why the two companies aren't more integrated so far, because there's a completely different culture of compensation. And there's some deeply embedded things that we're challenging on the Christmas side, especially. So like they don't do any kind of commissions. And I'm like, okay, well, why? Help me understand this. And so we are spending a lot of time going in there, and it's easy to just smash two companies together when they can't stand on their own. But Christmas can stand on its own, as can Bart's, right? And so that is also an option that many private equity, other companies do. We're not private equity, but they do that. They just run both brands. And so like I won't say that that's not an option, and that's how we're running it right now. With some of the back office, has been combined, and we're working through that. But we have been empowering the GM with a lot of time and decision-making ability and time to show what he wants to do and where he wants to go. And we are showing him how that fits into our overall picture. And so, we can talk as much as we want about we're just going to smash them together. But that is the main reason that they are not the same brand already, is because, I still love the Bart's brand. What are we going to do with that damn thing that we just put all this money into for the last, couple of years? And part of us says, okay, we'll just go make that a commercial arm and we'll go after that. And then other team says that's just a distraction. let's just go Christmas all in. And so, so there is no, I would say, true decision made. We have a timeline established. We have all the decisions that have to be made within that timeline. And then we have a commitment from all leaders to move forward based on that. And so, so right now we're just doing we're still dating. We're still trying to figure out, what this marriage looks like. And we haven't lost anyone yet, Jack, but that's certainly a risk. It's absolutely a risk. And we've been asking questions. Hey, how would you feel about if we change compensation like this? But it should never be a negative to them as far as like, I'm going to make you make less money. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to show you upside.
For going on 2 years, I've partnered with Service Scalers to do our Google Ads, PPC, and SEO. And the results have been huge. It's been really exciting to watch as our website consistently jumps up rank as we're using more technology and we're moving faster than our peers who are all using legacy home service marketing companies. We use Service Scalers for PPC, our local SEO, our on-page website SEO, and our LSA. So give them a call if you're looking for leads.
Yeah, I mean, and normally pitching to like a heavy, and I know a lot of this conversation revolves around the type, like you keep saying who we are. And I don't think it was something that I understand when people said that about their company prior to owning my own company. And when they say who we are, at least for us, it's a lot about it's culture, but it's also like business model. Well, how do we present ourselves to customers? What are the customers that we go after? Who are our customers? And so it's just it's an interesting dynamic when you smash these two companies together or don't, in trying to figure out, hey, some business models don't work without certain compensation structures, and if that's not correct, then how does that all feed into each other? But interesting. And so are you able to share that timeline? So like our timeline was 6 months on our last deal. It was 6 months merge. And we just came out of that, and it's been like not so wonderful. And then now we're finally starting to J-curve and actually make money, which is extremely fun from a P&L standpoint.
6 months doesn't seem bad.
No,
6 months is like, it's almost always like the first year's a shit show, and then it starts to get good at like month 18. Yeah. So 6 months, I'm like
6 months, but we also still Hoffman employees. So like they already knew what to do right out the gate. So we had people fit into our model. Because we're like,
dude, it sounds like you've got a strategy. It sounds like you've got a strategy.
We just take Hoffman's guys and then we run them at better pay.
I don't see what the issue is here. I think you're doing fine.
I didn't tell Hoffman that when we interviewed him though. So
yeah,
you did. No, yeah, you did.
I didn't tell him that I was actively stealing his employees as a headhunting.
I'm like, I distinctly remember that.
But I mean, so that what's the timeline that you're looking at, Nathan?
Yeah, so a decision by December. And we have like a more firm kind of. Yeah,
is it a decision by Christmas? It's
actually like the 10th of December, or like the first week or so. Why do you ask that way?
Your decision on Christmas by Christmas.
That would have been way better, honestly. Yeah,
that would have been way better. Honestly, I feel like you sort of missed
timeline a little bit.
I feel like you sort of missed.
Huge miss there.
Miss.
Huge miss there. But like, I think, there's a lot that goes into it, and that's we're thinking about. So like Bart, as an example, who we are, we have a mission, we have values, change lives through the trade, create smiles, do it every day. That's our mission. Our values are simple. There's only 4 of them. Be an owner, keep promises, have fun, serve others, and so, and then we have a compensation philosophy. Like we want to be in that 75th percentile, paying on the higher end for people. We want the best talent. I'd rather have higher quality, but fewer people than the other way around. And so, so like that's who we are as Barts. And so trying to make sure that if we do the same thing for Christmas, are we going to transfer over those things? Are like, we still want buy-in from that company. So we'll have conversations with them. We'll go through build out. They just went through all their quarterly rocks and, the cascading of those, and how everyone, from my perspective, everyone should have at least one number that they own personally, and they should know the overall number that they're kind of contribute to. And I should be able to ask any person in the company at any time what that number is, and they should be able to, to talk me through it. And so we're trying to build that rigor. But I'd say decision by December, or Christmas by Christmas. And then, I'd say before busy season. So by end of Q1, we are running together.
How are you thinking about continuing to use acquisitions after this?
Well, it's we have some real constraints. Balance sheet is only so big at this time. Availability of debt is only, like we've maxed our SBA at the moment because of how we're structured and all that stuff. So it's not like we have 4 guys who have 4 independent, $5 million or whatever. So because that's not, despite that would have been awesome. That's not how we decided to do it. So we have some real constraints there, figuring out. So I think it's going to slow down a little bit, and we'll just go to the most, fortunate opportunities. I think we'd be open to stuff outside of DFW, and I'm willing to do capital partners out there. But, Jack, when you said, hey, John, if you had a $50 million business you could buy right now, that'd be a real needle mover for you right now. I'm like, yeah, if John wants to give up some control or a lot of control, like that may be the case. But
a lot of control. Yeah.
I
couldn't take it down. Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So,
with that though, right. I mean, the first 2 of your deals were, smaller $1 million size deals.
Sure.
John, with that, does the bank open up different types of funding at that kind of, he's passing the $10 million mark, he can now get a $1 million line of credit essentially just on. Yeah.
So like conventional debt essentially opens up at 5 million of EBITDA.
Okay.
At 5 million, that's the easiest way to think about it. You get access to real banking at 5 million of EBITDA. You get access to real banking light at 2.5 million, and like just maybe. And that was like back in 22, 23. Economics realities are different 2 years later. So I think 5 million is probably the right guess here. And then the way that looks, it's different terms. So it's, like you're putting 30% cash infusion. There's 7-year AMs, 5-year AMs. It's a different type of debt. Like SBA is very, very friendly debt.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is not that. Yeah. So 5 million of EBITDA. And I think what starts to happen, bigger you get is and we felt, I think I've even talked about it on this show, but the external pressures become significantly more real. So if I was going to go bankrupt and I was a $5 million operator, probably happens every day. I don't know. But like the external people looking at what you're doing, there's not as many. They just sort of like, they put a lot of guardrails on you. If we go bankrupt now, we would cause a real issue. And all of the vendors are obviously aware of that because the amount of credit extended just with a normal vendor might be nearly 1 million. And we have a number of those. Banking and credit and all, it gets more complicated the bigger you get. And we're still like figuring it out, honestly. It's still an active, like we're trying to figure out what the rules are. Because when you start nearing and crossing $1 million of extended credit on a short-term line, they want much more visibility than you are used to giving.
Yeah.
So yeah, which I would too. It does totally make sense. It's just like if you don't know it's coming, it's sort of like, whoa, okay, what do you mean?
The financial colonoscopy, if you will. With
pretty much, yeah. Like we're having to start to provide quarterlies and monthlies to just our vendors.
Oh wow!
In order to, that's a new thing for us.
Yeah,
that's a new thing.
Yeah,
but our rate of growth is just so significant, and you're probably going to deal with the same thing. Like your rate of growth in HVAC, like our HVAC vendors will sit at 500 to 700 of credit extended, and our HVAC department is roughly the size of yours. So your vendors are going to have the same concerns because that's a lot of credit, and your volume just doubled. So like that's going to become a whole thing.
Yeah, I had a good conversation with our, like we got kind of upgraded on the banking at Chase recently. And I was like, okay, the one number I want to know is at what point do you stop asking for a PG from me? That's like, tell me the number, like show me the money here. And when they finally said it, they said 50 million in revenue. And which I think EBITDA matters way more, but it was fascinating. Like that's a big, big number.
Yeah. I mean, 5 million of EBITDA is a big number too. I mean, how many companies ever get to 5 million of EBITDA? Like realistically.
It's gotta be
so,
like
and I don't even know, like
1% or less. It's gotta be a way less.
Yeah. Okay. So you said you had big goals for what you guys are doing. Like walk me through what this thing looks like in 10 years.
In 10 years, so we're 3 years in. Our first one was 50 million in 5 years, trying to get to 100 million in less than 10. And so, I think it starts at DFW, and then we're looking for other places to go. But we have to get to tri-trade at least with electrical and plumbing. We are pushing hard on trying to add some tech layers on top of that to just distinguish us a little bit. But 100 million plus over the next 7 years is the goal. And more importantly, though, I think it's just building a great company we can be proud of that's profitable. And so like I have 4 kids. They're all older, 22, 19, 17, and 13. And 3 of the 4 have worked in the business so far. One of them potentially wants to, go long-term. And it's like, that's really exciting to me to have that opportunity to do those things. But, we're similar to, I won't say we've nailed it down like Hoffman or some of these other people who have this really wonderful long-term vision, long-term hold, but we do intend to hold long-term. We're not really interested in any kind of, divesting or bringing in other partners. We like having the control, and we like building what we want to build.
I'm looking forward to sort of seeing what happens the next year or 2 years as you I almost want to say are forced to focus on organic, just because like you said, you've run out of like available lending. Because that's sort of what happened with us. Like we still had capacity in SBA, but we just didn't want to. Because we had just grown a bunch. So we just sort of went forward. And it is amazing. You start figuring out all the stuff and the business just starts exploding.
We're really excited. Literally before this, what I was doing was going through every single Google pay-per-click call that we were getting, which is a god awful channel. Good Lord. 131 calls last month. Like our vendor told us, you're, $85 a call is what you're averaging right now. I call bullshit on that. I'm like, I don't see 131 calls. So I'm literally going through every call right now and matching it to every call and service type to see if there's any revenue coming from it. Like I'm listening to the calls really quickly to get an idea. And it's literally probably more like $160 to $200 a call, because 40% of them aren't even being like, it was never a call. Like there was no call received. There's no phone number. There's nothing associated with it. So it's fascinating because we're doing that on every channel to really kind of rebuild our marketing, tracking, and decision-making that's going to be a muscle that's on a daily basis, not a monthly or whatever else after the fact. So we know what good looks like, and we're trying to get ourselves there.
I think the bigger you get and you start to be able to like add in these layers, and I don't know why, but for some reason, and I think maybe the why is like, we're just moving outside of it and like being able to like look back and digest what we just went through, which like you guys are still in the thick of it. So you can't digest it, but in a year you will be able to. But like starting at like $1 million a month to that 2 million a month, I think we've talked about this in our chat, but like all of the infrastructure and all the stuff that gets to get added. But one of the exciting ones is you get to add like an internal marketing at some point, somewhat early in there.
So fun.
Yeah.
And it really, well, it gets fun. And even if you like, we still use external vendors, but like, it just makes it so there's other people driving the bus on like, how do we get the leads every day?
100%. Yeah. It'll be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause really, right. Until you get to that point where you're kind of getting, Nathan, it's you, just like you're doing today. It really is, it's me, it's you, it's the owner who's going through and making sure that marketing, the amount we're paying out, the absorbent amounts we're paying out every day, every week, every month is being realized in actual leads. And I would love to have somebody to take that over, because it is such a time sink, like to actually have to go through and reconcile 110 calls.
Yeah, 131.
Just to make sure that you're actually like, hey, it is an 81. It's this. Now I need good data. Get it for me. So and more than anything, I want to be able to know how to hold them accountable. I think that's what I'm really trying to get at. It's not about I need to do this necessarily. It's about I want to understand this, because it doesn't matter if it's an outside vendor or in-house. If you don't know how to like call the bullshit flag or hold them accountable or go deep where you need to, like I think that's the mark of any good owner or leader, is like that curiosity, that Sherlock Holmes of like, I can go
I can go investigate anything and get curious. So, want to model that for other people on the team as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's also being a good steward of your money too, right? You have only so much cash flow. You need, and everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, there's a lot of people though throughout the business that hold out their hand, and you have to make sure that they are being accountable at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure just keeps growing.
Well, Christmas is running so much more efficient than Bart's. And so it helps ask a lot of questions for us to say like, hey, what are we doing here? Do we really need to spend this here? And, is it worth it? And, we don't have the good enough answers, I'd say, on that right now. So helping us challenge a lot of things.
That's cool. How does the customer list look comparatively? Like we talk a lot about the ability to outbound to internal customers, and a lot of that is from a internal customer list. What was your customer list at Bart's compared to Christmas?
Yeah, I think we're right around 10,000 for Bart's, and don't quote me on this, but I think right around 14,000 for Christmas. So, it's going to be a pretty meaningful list, and I think we're around 2,500 members between the two overall. So
yeah, that is
building the base is. That's the part we're excited for, because if you know how to run that well, then our plumbing should be able to take off across both brands. If you want to do electrical in the future or anything else, and so I think that's the excitement, is trying to build organic. You already nailed it, John. Like, I'm way more excited about organic and proving that we can grow meaningfully in the future. And I think 30% is the number that's always in the back of our head. We want to beat that sometimes for sure, but like, how do we maintain 30% growth organically year over year? And if you want more than that, then, there's other investments you have to do, whether that's acquisitions or, headcount ahead of time or whatever.
Timeline. But I like to think that the best use case for growth through acquisition is either getting to a minimum to be able to grow meaningfully organically, which is, I think, where you're at now, or using it to cross a threshold. And or I guess my third, but it didn't come up here, is like entering a new trade. It's much easier to just acquire. But yeah, I think, getting to that like minimum point, it's almost like escape velocity.
Yep.
Like, you've entered escape velocity where like, okay, now you can invest $1 million if you chose to, and it wouldn't be unreasonable to invest that into marketing, and you would be able to really drive.
Yeah. We would have loved to have bought Christmas first, right? Like, that's the size of the company that we wanted in the first place, but we couldn't. Yeah. We didn't have the credibility, and we didn't know enough what we were doing, and we were getting outbid. So we decided to be in the game. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't wish the 1 million to 3.5, 4 million journey on anyone. My God, it's hard. I'd rather start from scratch. I'd start from scratch over that. Literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eye-bleeding.
It's challenging.
I agree. Unfortunately, as someone right in the middle of it, I also agree.
Yeah. It's a lot. I like, most of my career was there, so I feel like I still remember it. But it's a lot. I'm glad that's not the case anymore. So you're going to be integrating, you're going to be building. You've got a busy next 90 days ahead of you. You guys are aiming for 50 million first, then 100 million next. Those sound like good goals to me. What else do you guys would think would be helpful as a resource to people looking to grow through acquisition?
Yeah, I just mean, so a lot of searchers, they come in here, or people that are growing through acquisition, and they see, 3X, I have to buy it at a 3X multiple, and or 4X, or whatever the market is saying on Twitter, or their M&A coach is saying, and they absolutely get screwed, including myself.
Well, there's ways to underbid and over. So like, we have, I would say for most small companies, 100. Like, if you're buying $1 million company and paying it 3 times, like, bingo, you're doing it wrong. But like, if you, like, we have a company we're talking to right now, and I think we're at like a 5, might be like 4.5 or 5 to them. But the moment you start merging shit, literally $1 million of their overhead goes away. Yep. $1 million. And then probably another $500,000 of materials, because we buy so much better, because we just have different buying power. So for them, it's a 5 times, 4.5 times. But for us, it's like a 2 times or a 2.5. Like, it's like, we're adding, it's like 1.3 of EBITDA. It's kind of wild.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Just straight to the bottom, because we don't need any overhead to add it. So I do think like multiples matter, but the math gets weird when you're just literally tucking that thing in.
It's all about the definition. And that's what, like, anytime anyone asks on that, like you just name like, hey, what's the multiple for them versus what it is for me? And the same thing for us, like is their multiple include add backs, or is it exactly how they say they're running it and reporting to, the IRS? Because if that's what you're saying, then we're paying like a 6X on this thing, but if it's anything reasonable that you get rid of and you show like what EBITDA was for people actually doing jobs and all that stuff, we're closer to like a little over a 4X, and that's for them, and that's before we see our efficiencies. So, really just depends. You can define it however you want to say the numbers.
I remember doing a deal, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago, but it was like $2 million revenue, and I think it was like a 4 times to them, and we ended up buying it. It was like maybe $900,000. Or $1 million. It was something like that. And we bought it, and it really ended up being like almost a 1 times or like 1.5. It was just because I think as you start getting into this, like everything on the P&L changes, which is kind of fun when you start merging them together. Because really all you're getting out of a merger is the phone calls. So if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at a $5 million tuck-in, then like their labor rate's going to change, their materials are going to change, their entire overhead structure goes away. It becomes part of mine, but it goes away. Like, and their revenue changes because we changed their price. So it's like, like nothing matters. It's like it's the weirdest, because you'll explain that to someone who's like buying their first one and they're like, yeah, but what's like gross margin? I'm like, I don't think you understand. It doesn't matter. Like nothing matters. Like how many times does the phone ring a day organically? And that is actually our leading metric for, am I going to buy this thing?
I love that. Oh, and it goes to explain why people like PE can come in and look like idiots based on the price they're paying, and it actually can make a ton of sense for them, and so many, because their math on back end is all that matters. It doesn't matter what it's doing here. It matters what it's going to do in the future, and the new P&L. Yeah. So, I think you nailed it.
And how did you go about sourcing deals? Like what was the big way you found these?
Yeah. So number one, we just went straight traditional, right through a broker. We just talked to a ton of brokers in DFW, got our name out there, end up taking down a small deal. Second one ended up being a hip pocket listing that was never listed, again, through a broker. And so we had a little bit of credibility from closing our first one. And then after that, like we took a break for a little bit. And then I'd say this year, probably this whole year, anybody that would listen, we were telling them what our criteria was and that we're buying businesses and to think of us, and especially our suppliers. And so we moved over to a new supply house, a distributor, and they've been absolutely wonderful. And so as soon as we just kept peppering him, he's like, I just heard of this great one. And it was literally, it was a company that was kind of kicking our butt, and two of our owners live in Flower Mound, Texas. So it's right up on the north side of Fort Worth, Dallas. And this company is from Flower Mound, and they are just cult following. Like if someone posts on Facebook or Nextdoor, 30 referrals to them before anyone else shows up. And so we're like, we want to buy this company. This is who we want. And it turns out that was the company that was introduced to us. And, so we hopped on that as fast as possible. No, it was off market. We dealt with the seller the whole way. Him and his mom, super high character. And so I'd say just having the credibility of getting deals done and nailing that down. And now you have people who are actually listening. And I'd say we get, maybe 2 or 3 leads a week of mostly off-market deals from suppliers and other people that may not be in our strike zone. But and then the last thing I'll say really quickly, because you're talking about growth through acquisition, we have a really simple pitch to people, and it's 4 things. Number 1, we'll give you terms and a price that we know we can close on. Number 2, we're going to take care of your people. Number 3, we're going to take care of your customers. Number 4, we'll honor your legacy if that's something that matters to you. And so, getting that really down, and then just being likable. Like as soon as we can meet someone in person, listening, asking lots of questions about their people. So not only should you be the person that people are sending leads to, you should be able to close them when they come.
Yeah, I actually don't really know that I've ever thought about supplier. That's a good one. I had a supplier send a cold lead to me maybe a month or 2 ago, but I couldn't do anything with it. Yeah. I'm really disappointed because I found out an hour ago that a competitor of mine sold. And that's especially disappointing because one, I would have bought them. And it's probably very similar in DFW and in Tennessee, but like there's nobody private anymore. There's only like 3 companies that I can think of private north of $10 million in my market, like 3. And this one was 7, and there's still not many of those.
Yeah.
I can only think of like 5 or 6. So this was one of the 5 or 6 companies that was private, and they sold like, I don't even know. They didn't even go through a broker. It was like I was like, dude, I would have closed. That sucks. Dang. And I obviously should have been like better at like proactive, like what you just did, doing outreach through vendors and suppliers and contacts. Cause I'm sure we would have found out. Somebody would have told me that.
Yeah. I mean, even when we sit down with like the CEO of our suppliers or the presidents, like we're like, when they ask how we could help, introduce us to opportunities, just over and over and over and over again. They were just training a new guy through our space. Hey, you told him if he talks to anyone that wants to sell, we're the first people we go to. Cause now we're one of the bigger, customers of the supplier. They know we're going to stick with American Standard, for the time being. So, like there's a lot of incentive there, and that's been our most fruitful channel presently by far.
Yeah, I agree. That's where we get most of ours as well through is the supplier. I mean, they're out there, the sales guys out there talking to 50, 60 companies, and they get to go out to lunch and have all the details and enjoy that time together. And then when they say, hey, I'm thinking about moving on, they're some of the first people to hear about it.
Yeah, I think that always blew my mind because people would say that, and I'm like, the literal last person that I would ever tell is my supplier, because I don't want them to get funky with my credit. We talked about growth through acquisition. We talked about Bart's crazy growth story turning into Christmas now, potentially by Christmas. Find out soon. If people want to connect with you and hear more, how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn at Nate Lenahan, and then the number 8 because I've got lots of street cred, and Lenahan, Lenahan, and then or you can check us out at bartshvac.com. That's our or christmasair.com. Either one.
Hey yo.
We serve the northwest quadrant of DFW.
That's awesome, man.
Awesome.
All right, thanks for coming on today.
Okay.
If you liked what you heard, make sure you check out ownedandoperated.com.